Welcome back. We're talking about the immigration debate in the United States. Joining us now, Jacqueline Thompson is a reporter for the political news website The Hill. From New York, Julio Rivera is a conservative commentator and writer contributing to Newsmax and Town Hall. And from Cleveland, David Leopold is an immigration attorney. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Julio, let's start in New York, and I want to get your reaction to what you heard from Congressman Raul Grijalva. You know, he was talking there about the current immigration situation in the United States, especially what's going on the southern border. He described what's going on as cruel, inhumane. He said that ICE, which is charged with enforcing this policy, has become very politicized. In fact, the whole issue has become politicized. He said, this is politicized because there's an election coming up, a midterm election coming up, and this is throwing red meat to President Trump's base. What did you make of it all?
Well, I think, quite frankly, it's throwing political red meat, but it's throwing it to the Democrats, and it's being politicized by the Democrats. Let's face it, you know, this child separation policy is something that came about during the Clinton administration. You know, it was part of the Flores decision. And if you want to look at, you know, President Trump himself, 3 weeks before DACA expired, he put out a message and put the Democrats on notice. Find 10 senators and let's put together a comprehensive immigration reform bill. The bottom line is these optics are being used by the left to try to continue to perpetuate this false narrative that Trump and the Republicans are xenophobic and they're somehow racist. But at the end of the day, all they want to do is enforce the rule of law. And it's being politicized not only by the left as far as the legislators and the people running for office, it's also happening in the judiciary.
Right.
You had judges like Carmine DePaulo, you know, last year advocating for Hillary Clinton's immigration reform plan, which was a direct violation of the Hatch Act. It's not coming from the right, it's coming from the left. They want to continue this all the way through November, and when the election comes, they hope that it'll help them, you know, try to manufacture this new wave that they think is coming.
Julio, we can talk about the politics of all of this. We can talk about the law, we can talk about the right and the left, but what about the humanity of it all? What about the fact that children as young as 1 are being separated from their parents?
Well, I put that on the parents. At the end of the day, the parents made the decision to come here. And not everybody coming here is legitimately seeking asylum. You know, it's become a whole business now in law with this whole, you know, immigration lawyers coming out. There's a lot of people that are prompting and, you know, teaching these people what to say, training them in legalese, that when their feet hit American soil, they say the magic words to go ahead and be reviewed for amnesty or for asylum. And a lot of these people are not necessarily qualified for asylum. Okay,
David, you're the attorney. What do you make of this?
Well, maybe we can move from Republican talking points to some facts. So let me get started here. When somebody comes over the border and asks for asylum, if they used some sort of a script, they're going to be stopped. Because what do you have? The law is that you have what's called a credible fear interview. And what happens there is the officer listens. And if what the person's saying is credible and they show fear, and they're probably going to win before an immigration judge, they get referred to the next step. So all this stuff about people reading scripts and lawyers feeding them, look, the lawyers down at the border are doing things that are extremely important. It's the lawyers from the ACLU, for example, that stop this despicable, reprehensible, arguably criminal separation of children, which, by the way, is a Trump policy. It's not true.
No, it's not.
Let me finish. I let you talk.
All the way back
Julio,
to 1997.
One moment.
Julio, let me finish.
I'll get back to you, Julio. Go ahead, David.
To say that started by Bill Clinton or Barack Obama is just not true, all right? The Flores decision, which was mentioned earlier, was a decision which protected children who came unaccompanied. And that decision was then extended during the Obama administration. And yes, the Obama administration did detain families, and we criticized them for that. And the Flores decision was extended to include children that came with their parents.
Right.
The separation, this despicable separation, where you take toddlers and you take children who can barely speak, and you throw them into a system that is designed for unaccompanied children without tracking them, without figuring out how to later reunify them with their parents, that is Trump. That is Jeff Sessions' zero tolerance policy, where they go after everybody who crosses between border checkpoints. And let me tell you why that is a problem. Yes, it is not, it is illegal to cross between border checkpoints.
Right.
No question, it's a federal misdemeanor. But the law is clear. Section 208, if you want to become wonky about it, of the Immigration and Nationality Act says that you can apply for asylum in the United States regardless of how you get here, regardless of whether you came with papers. So it's not illegal. So let's be really clear. It is not illegal to come to the United States and apply for asylum. It is enshrined in our law.
Okay.
Period.
All right, Julio, I will get you. Let me bring Jacqueline into this conversation. What is the situation right now insofar as the status of the people who are at the border, the children, the reunification with the parents? What is going on?
Well, the Trump administration had a deadline earlier this month to reunite all the immigrant children under the age of 5 with their parents. They reunited about 4 dozen of them before they said, okay, we've reunited all the ones that were able to reunite at this point. They have an upcoming deadline on July 26th. That's for all the children under the age of 18 or below, in which they have identified, I would say, about 2,000 children, where they say that we have to reunite them with their parents by that deadline. Now, it's the Department of Health and Human Services that is in charge of this reunification process, and they've said in court filings and out of court filings that they will not be reuniting all of the children with their parents, because there are instances where maybe the parents aren't able to take back the children. They've identified instances where the parents may have been deported, in which case a federal judge has since ordered that no more families or parents can be deported in order to make sure that all those separations can happen by that legally set deadline.
Do we know the sort of ages of the children involved here? Because there was one case I think it was in Arizona, where there was a 1-year-old who was asked to appear in court.
Yes, there was that case that was widely reported. There were far more between the ages of 17 and 6 than there were under the age of 5, but there have been instances of tender age shelters that have been reported where that's around the age of toddlers, about 3-year-olds that are being detained at this moment.
Okay, Julio, I know you want to respond to all that you've heard here, but I want to ask you about something else. You know, many of the parents who are leaving their homes in Central America mainly to come to the United States are making this risky trip over very harsh terrain, and they are seeking sanctuary. They're escaping violence in their countries, persecution in many instances.
Well, I mean, those countries are in bad shape. I mean, but unfortunately, it's not necessarily the responsibility of the United States of America to take in everyone when we have our own issues here. You know, and the parent, as far as the responsibility, you get these optics, you get the little girl crying, and you get the false narrative being pushed out there by Time magazine with the Trump cover and all of these other things. The responsibility ultimately does need to lie with those parents that are going ahead and risking their children, putting them through that.
Yeah, go ahead.
How is it false?
How is it the parents' fault?
How is the narrative false, sir? Julio,
you said the narrative was false. The Time magazine cover, you're telling me the Time magazine cover, which was widely disproven, is now the truth? Listen, it's real easy to come out there and sprout your credentials as a lawyer and quote this and that, but I've been hearing a lot of things from you that are quite frankly untrue. You know, at the end of the day, we have to have borders.
What did I say,
we have
Julio,
to have
that
be
was
a sovereign
untrue?
nation. We have to worry about Americans before we worry about the problems of the rest of the world.
What did I say that was untrue, Julio? Specifically, what did I say that was untrue? Was it the law that I cited? Was it the fact that
you saying that this was an exclusive Trump policy to separate children is a bold-faced lie. This goes all the way back to 1997. It continued through George W. Bush, a Republican, Barack Obama, and yes, at the very beginning of the Trump administration, and we're only a year and a half into it, and he's been calling for comprehensive immigration reform. Why can't we find 10 Democrats to come to the table and help out and try to get a bill that we can pass through the Senate?
Right, okay, Julio. David, go ahead.
Yeah, let's back up. I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but what I did cite was the law. And the reality is that the family separation policy is new to the Trump administration. It was a policy decision by the Trump administration. and no other administration in the history of the country has done that. All right, so we can move on to the next point that he's been making, and that this is a Democratic ploy to win the election. Well, you know, that's just not true, because, you know, if you look at what happened when DACA, for example, that was the example that was given, when the president unilaterally canceled DACA and exposed.
No, it expired.
Okay, sorry. Can I just interrupt you there, David? Can you explain?
No,
can you explain to us,
a
David?
point that you made,
David,
Julio.
1 moment.
You made a point,
okay,
and I want to answer it.
David, just one moment. Could you explain to our viewers what DACA is?
Sure. DACA is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. That was the program that was put into place by President Obama, which offers dreamers, people that came here at a tender age with their parents undocumented and who have been here a long time, since before 2007. It offered them a temporary protection from deportation if they hadn't committed crimes, if they were in school or finishing school.
Right.
And it allowed them a work authorization for a temporary period of time.
A ticking time bomb left by Obama.
Yeah, 1 moment. Jacqueline, what is the situation concerning the people involved in this, you know, the people being affected by this, the whole immigration debate in Congress? Is there anything being done in Congress? I mean, one can understand that the White House can act as the executive in implementing all these policies, but what about the other branches of government? What are they doing?
Yeah, definitely. So Congress actually attempted to pass 2 different immigration bills, but one of them was a hardline bill, one was more of a compromise bill. Both of them failed within the House of Representatives. One of the moderate ones was actually a response to some more moderate Republicans trying to do a discharge petition, which would have forced a vote on DACA, as we were referring to earlier. And then would have also addressed some more immigration reform issues there. But those both failed. President Trump said that he was backing one of them, and then after it failed, said he was no longer backing either of them and had never backed either of them. And he had also initially said before the votes had been held that Republicans just shouldn't touch immigration until after the midterms. It was too risky. It's always been a third rail topic. It's something that just shouldn't be brought up, just in case they do end up having a vote that causes them to lose their seat. So the most recent legislation that has been discussed has actually been a bill to abolish ICE that's been introduced by some Democrats.
Right.
Republican leadership said they were initially going to bring it up for a vote in a way to kind of drive a wedge within the Democratic Party, but then decided to no longer hold that vote.
Okay. Julio, we've just got a little bit of time left, about 2 minutes. Let me ask you this. What would you like to see happen?
I'd like to see a comprehensive immigration reform bill that addresses securing the border. It addresses giving protections to the dreamers, which the president did mention before. You know, he did actually want to grant some semblance of legalization to the dreamers, and even went a step further, saying that he'd be willing to grant some semblance of legalization to up to 1.8 million people who are in the country currently, either illegally or under DACA or previously under DACA protection before it expired. So I think that's extending the olive branch. The problem is the Democrats don't want to go ahead and address the issue in any meaningful way. They wanted to extend it all the way through November, so then they can, you know, hopefully get their negative optics, more things to try to hit this president on, more fake news, and hopefully manufacture, you know, a Democratic win for the House.
David, are we going to see anything happen before the midterm elections? You know what we're going to see? Yesterday, the President of the United States basically surrendered to Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. Okay, it was a betrayal. And what we're going to see, because of the pushback, the blowback that he got, that he didn't expect, which is unilateral, it's bipartisan, it's across the country, to watch our president kowtow to a murderous dictator, what you're going to see is another attack on immigrants in this country, because it's another shiny object that they can throw out there, which does 2 things. Number one, it takes people's eyes off the horror of what is the Trump administration and what damage it's doing to our foreign policy and to our country. And number 2, it feeds meat to his base, to Trump's base, because they love this kind of stuff. They love seeing the children separated. They love seeing the people's families torn apart. Yeah. What I'd like to see, first of all, is a rational, decent discussion without talking points and based on fact. And what I'd like to see is us get to consensus, because I do think there's a lot of agreement out there. I do think the majority of the Americans in this country, 60% plus, want to see a comprehensive solution to this, including a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented. We need to fix business immigration. The Trump administration is shutting America's doors to business, and that's got to stop.
Okay, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. We have run out of time. Thanks to all of you for being with us.